Game of Thrones fans, it is time to talk about Season 8, Episode 2, the episode that just aired a few days ago on Sunday. I didn't get a chance to review it the time that I wanted to review it, but I'm here reviewing it now. If you haven't seen Episode 2 from Season 8 of Game of Thrones, I suggest you click out of this video, go watch that episode, come back to this video, shoot the shit with me, because we have quite a bit of things to discuss, quite a bit of things to talk about, because this episode was just... if there's one word to describe this episode, it would probably be wholesome. Like, this was a wholesome-ass episode. There was just so much good shit that happened. For starters, one thing this episode really did off the bat that I really liked is that it really did kind of hammer home that this is it. Like, there was a sense of finality to this episode. This felt like the calm before the storm. This felt like how things are before the other shoe drops. Like, every character gets moments, and some of the moments are big, some of the moments are small, but they all fit together. They're all really important in the grand scheme of things. Some characters get really great moments, like happy moments, like moments we can celebrate, moments that we can look at these characters and lift them up one more time before the Night King and his army tears them all to pieces next week. This episode was important. A lot of people will look at it and they'll be like, it's just a bunch of talking scenes. What's really going on here? But think about it, man. This is all about the build-up. This is all about preserving these characters and their memories and giving us that one last moment to cheer them on before next week. This is really our last chance to enjoy them as they are. Speaking of enjoying characters as they are, this episode jumps right into the thick of things. Jaime Lannister came to Winterfell at the end of last week's episode. Now in this episode, he is here standing in front of Daenerys Targaryen, and he basically has to try to defend his actions. The thing I love about Jaime is that he just doesn't give a fuck, though. He's just like, hey, look, I'm not defending the stuff that I've done, okay? I did it for my house. We were at war. Things were different, basically. I know Dany has spent the last few years denouncing her father. She knows he was the Mad King. She doesn't have a lot of respect for her father, but still, this is the man that killed her father, and it's hard for her to look past that. Totally understand when, no pun intended, Dany is kind of spitting fire in his direction in the beginning of the episode. In an episode full of great moments for Brienne, she steps to Jaime's side. She's like, hey, look, I vouch for him. He's a good man. He's a loyal friend. He helped me. He saved my life. And I will fight next to him if need be. You know, Sansa trusts Brienne more than anyone else. She's like, oh, okay, well, if you trust him, then I trust him. Hey, I'm with you. That's all you needed to say. Okay, anything else? All right, let's move on. The funniest part about this scene is that Dany stood up and she kind of looked at Jon and she was just kind of like, hey, babe, what do you have to say about this? And Jon's just like, Auntie, we need all the men that we can get. And at the end, when everybody gets up and everybody just kind of awkwardly walks away from an awkward scene, she looks to Jon because she's like, hey, that's Boo, I'm going to get some comfort. And Jon is just kind of like, Your Grace. And then he just walks away and he doesn't even look at her. You can tell it's kind of an awkward moment for Dany. She kind of expected Jon to have her back a little bit, and everybody just kind of dismissed her because they're like, look, your father was a piece of shit. Sure, he's the Kingslayer, but we got bigger things to worry about right now than your personal vendetta against Jaime Lannister. The scene also served as to kind of hammer home the point that Tyrion is not the same clever man that he used to be. Jaime basically tells her straight up, he's like, look, Cersei never intended to send any kind of army north. She's regrouping on the Iron Throne. She's got 20,000 Golden Company with Euron Greyjoy and the rest of his fleet, and she's not coming. This immediately calls Tyrion's competence into question. Dany's like, look, you keep making mistakes, man. You've made a lot of mistakes over the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 seasons since I met you. It's Cersei, man. Cersei's gonna be the same evil bitch no matter if the world is ending or whether everything is fine. Like, she's Cersei at this point. That's okay because that allows us to segue into some of the smaller moments in the episode. There's those moments where Arya is talking with Gendry. She's still trying to get him to make that weapon for her. And then I don't think he even at this point fully appreciates the kind of badass that Arya has become at this point. Arya shows off by throwing a bunch of knives in a very specific direction, landing on a very specific point on like a wooden pole or something. Is like, oh yeah, weapon, yeah, sure, coming right up, my lady. Little did we know that this was going to transition into one of the more awkward scenes of the entire series, when later on in the episode, Arya's like, hey, look, so we could die tomorrow, and I want some dick before I die, because I've never had dick before, and, you know, you're here, and I've always kind of liked you. We've known each other for a while now. Also, you're Robert Baratheon's bastard, and I don't know, that has to count for something. And Arya gets naked and she gives up the cheeks to Gendry, and a lot of people were kind of awkward about this scene, but I don't know, I feel like I was awkward about it for different reasons. People felt awkward about it because they're like, Arya still looks kind of young-ish, even though the actress is 22. Let's face it, she still has a baby face. I felt awkward about it only because I've watched Arya grow up. Like, season 1, she was such a little kid, and now she's like a grown woman, and it's just kind of hard for me to accept that Arya's a grown woman at this point. I mean, parents out there, just think about it. If you got to watch somebody grow up and then you got to see them, their first sex scene, like you got to actually witness it with your own eyes, imagine how awkward that shit would be. Luckily, Maisie Williams made fun of it on Twitter. She's like, hey, if you think that you feel awkward, just imagine my family having to watch that scene. They probably felt awkward as shit too. Funniest thing about the scene though is that later on when Pod is singing his Lord of the Rings Pippin throwback song, and come on, you can't act like that didn't remind you of Pippin from Lord of the Rings. I can't even remember what song Pod is singing when they're all grouped around the fire. He's singing I think it's like Jenny's Old Stones or something. The point is, when he is singing that song, it reminded me immediately of Pippin's song from Lord of the Rings Return of the King, when Faramir and his men are riding into battle. They're trying to defend Osgiliath, and then they end up dying, and then the guy is eating grapes, and it's really disgusting. But hey, it's a really great moment. To the edge of night, all shall fade. All shall fade. This song reminded me of that, but while that song was playing, it was kind of funny that Gendry was fast asleep, and then Arya was awake, and she was just, I don't know, thinking about shit. Arya has a really good poker face at this point, so we're not really sure what she's thinking. I mean, part of her could be thinking, damn, I could be dying in a few hours. I'm glad I got a chance to do this. The other part of it, the part that the internet loves, the part that the internet had to exploit with memes, is the fact that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. Just saying, maybe part of her expression is, damn, Gendry's, he's not that good at this. I expected more. Is that it? Is that what I was waiting all this time for? I thought that I'd be fulfilled by the time of it, but no. I mean, it lasted, what, like 5-10 minutes? He's asleep. I'm sitting here unsatisfied. Well, I've got to choose my suitors more carefully next time. There are a lot of great little moments between Tyrion and Jaime in this episode. Great line that Tyrion says to Jaime where it's like, look, you always knew what Cersei was. You just loved her anyway. And yeah, now here we are. He has plenty of great moments with Brienne in this episode. There's that one scene where Jaime goes to talk to Brienne, and Brienne is like, look, what you want, man? What you want? And Jaime's like, look, I want to fight under your command. I'm not the fighter that I once was, but I'd be honored to serve under your command if you will have me, if you will allow me to fight for you. You can tell Brienne is kind of touched. She's like, yeah, okay, I'm with that. And definitely this episode pushed the ship of Jaime and Brienne dangerously close together. At this point, if anybody can tell the cues from these two people, you can tell there's something there. Like, there's a whoosh. Like, if you watch that scene where Jaime asks Brienne to serve under her command, there's a whoosh in the air between them. I can't really describe it other than to say it was a whoosh. It was a hot whoosh. It was heat. It was fire. It was snowing in Winterfell, obviously, so it's cold, but you could just tell it was just some kind of whoosh that popped up in between them. And it's a really bad way of explaining that these two have some kind of romantic something going on here. Best moment of the episode is also one of the best moments of the entire series, though. It's the part where Brienne gets knighted. Brienne is like the most knightly character in Game of Thrones history. Like, she's always all about honor and loyalty and fulfilling oaths and stuff like that. And Jaime, of course, he is an anointed knight, so he does have the ability, he does have the authority to knight her, and it's a great moment. Having Brienne get down on her knees. Wow, okay, I have to rephrase that a little bit. Down on her knees because she's being knighted, not for any other reason. She's being knighted, and it's a great moment. And Jaime knights her, and then she arises as one of the Knights of the Seven Kingdoms, which I guess is the title of the episode. To be honest, the title of the episode for me is all about giant milk. It's just all about giant milk, and if you know anything about what Tormund was doing in this episode, the giant milk story, I mean, come on, it has to be called Giant Milk. It's a moment that we'll remember next week when Brienne is slaughtered brutally on the battlefield. I mean, let's be honest. That shit is coming, and we don't want to see it, but it's gonna happen. Likewise, Grey Worm and Missandei are basically making plans for what they're gonna do after all the fighting is stopped. Anytime you have anybody in a war setting that tries to make plans for what they're gonna do after the war, you already know more than likely they're not going to live. So Grey Worm, I mean, shit, it's nice knowing you, buddy. The moment of truth at the end of the episode where Jon and Dany have a talk finally, because he's basically avoiding her the entire episode. We finally get to the end of the episode, and Jon is forced to tell Dany the truth, that he is actually Aegon Targaryen, that he is the last male descendant that can ascend to the Iron Throne. Like, he actually has a claim to it. She's sitting there, and she's basically like, holy shit, you have Targaryen, and you're the last living male descendant ascendant to the Iron Throne. There's a look on Dany's face that actually is like, I'm gonna have to kill this nigga. And I'm just like, whoa, 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 Dany, how important is this damn throne to you? You can see it on her face. You can tell she was at least thinking about it, like, holy shit, you're a threat now. I'm still a little bit thrown by the fact that no one actually thinks about the heart of what these discoveries is, which is that Jon banged his aunt, and his aunt banged him, and they've been banging for months, but apparently that's not a big deal. I get that she's Targaryen, and that Targaryens' incest is not really a huge thing. They did it all the time, or whatever. There should have come, like, a small moment, like, where she's sitting there, and she's like, oh, Rhaegar was your father. Oh, okay. Wait, so that means you're my nephew. Oh my god, I had your whole ass dick in my mouth. But whatever, I like the fact that the writers didn't give her or Jon much of a chance to react to it, because at the end of the episode, the dead have arrived at Winterfell, and next week promises to be an absolute bloodbath. They said it's going to be the longest recorded battle in the history of, like, ever, so I have no idea what's going to happen. I have a feeling, though, that Jon, Dany, Sansa, maybe Bran are going to survive. Fairly certain that Theon is not going to survive. I mean, he volunteered to protect Bran during the battle, and that's just probably not going to end well for him at all. Little tidbits, I like the fact that I did see Ghost. Ghost did pop up in this episode. He didn't do anything. It was nice to see Ghost. He was standing up there with Jon and Sam on top of the wall. A meeting between Bran and Jaime where Jaime has to go, hey, bro, listen, I'm sorry about what happened. It's not me anymore. I was a different man. And Bran's just kind of like, hey, I'm Three-Eyed Raven. I don't really give a fuck anymore. Kind of went about as expected. By the way, Tormund was the MVP of this entire episode. He had the funniest moments. He had the funniest lines. He had the funniest story. He's the reason why this episode should be called Giant Milk. So, I don't know. Just give it up for Tormund. I hope he survives next week too, but you never know. Anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on episode 2 of season 8 for Game of Thrones. Can't wait for the Battle of Winterfell next week. Tell me what were your favorite moments from episode 2. Put them in the comment section below. Please like and subscribe to the Superfan Show. And as always, if you like what you see, tell me how you feel and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.